good afternoon on what is a grey, overcast, blustery but mild day. It is Wednesday the 23rd of February. I am back in the reading nook with parcel and counting this not hours, and a nice hot cup of tea. And I'm going to get into this parcel. It is stroke the cat, keep him happy, because he does look like a fuss to be made of. Also taking care with the knife to keep it away from his all too inquisitive nose. What we have got in here is, see whether we can see that, okay, is the Goodman Games Gen Con 2016 program guide. Now I've been slowly picking these up because they're a lot of fun. Okay. So here we got is Goodman Games Gen Con 2016 program guide, Metamorphosis 40th anniversary edition. Now this came out in 2016, which is well, now it's 6 years ago. It's when Metamorphosis Alpha was brought back and published in a very nice anniversary edition. And I've reviewed it, and I've reviewed supplements for it, and I really like it. But this is essentially they celebrated it coming back in this program guide. Now the program guides are published every year by Goodman Games at Gen Con or for Gen Con, and they are a mixture of things. It's an annual of things like previews and scenarios and support for their games and also for their community, which makes them fun reads, useful reads, and allows you to sort of just look at some of the community involved with Goodman Games. Goodman Games really does foster a fun community of judges who run games on the road, encourages creativity and supports lots of fanzines and other publications, some of which I've done unboxings of, some of which I have done full reviews. But this is actually a double-sided issue, because it's on the back we have a Goodman Games Gen Con program guide, Judges Guild celebrating 40 years, 1976 to 2016. So basically same age as Metamorphosis Alpha. Okay, let's not deny the situation with Judges Guild and the reputation of the people behind it. Okay, I'm not going to say I support that by any means, but I do support what they created. A lot of it was inventive and fun and playable. But the politics I do not agree with at all. Okay, and that came upon later after this book, so obviously didn't know anything about that at the time. So we'll get into this. So we have, let's have a look. We open up with a basic introduction from Joseph Goodman himself. Before we have more two new letters for the Dungeon Alphabet. Goodman Games have done a series of alphabet-based supplements, which are really so here we have G is also for Guardians, and so it's got an introduction to Guardians, and then a table of 10 terrible Guardians defending terrific treasures. Instant encounters in each one of those. Drop that into a dungeon, away you go. Provide the stats, and there you are. With accompanied by great art. Again, Goodman Games really does foster good artists, and here we've got Russ Nicholson art, and he's a fantastic artist. He's been drawing content for the role-playing industry for decades, going all the way back to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, White Dwarf, and so on. And it's great to see it here. And then we've also got H is also for Hazard, with a half score of hazardous happenings, just things that you can throw at your players. So these are options. Then you don't have to have these, but essentially you've got these on the table. They're great inspiration. Before we go into 40 years of Metamorphosis Alpha, a legacy of innovation. So here's we've got basically a nice historical article about the history of Metamorphosis Alpha, which is the first science fiction and essentially the first post-apocalyptic game set upon aboard a giant colony ship called the Warden, which has an accident, goes through a field of radiation or things like that, and basically throws a spanner in the works and called the systems, and the inhabitants sort of like lose access to technology, forget how it works, and Then you have their descendants, and you roleplay their descendants, and okay, it's your coming of age. You are 16, you are going to go out of the world. You might be a mutated plant, or a mutant, or a pure strain human. Here's your spear, go and investigate, and what they don't know is they've investigated a giant spaceship. And that's a great setup. I really love it, and very much you it's essentially very much exploring a world you don't know anything about, and you are mostly relying upon your mutant powers and the gear that you find to survive. And here we have next thing that's designed by James M. Ward, who is the first ever recipient of the E. Gary Gygax Lifetime Achievement Award. Here, celebrated. And support the game, we have 4 tables of 40. So lots of things the player characters aboard the Starship Warden can find and encounter with, tables of 40. You'll need a 40-sided die or something that would do that. So 2d20, 1d20 rolling to see rolling high or low. Traps of the Unwary, for example. And we've also got a surprisingly good thing, gel nanobots, and lastly, unusual things. Because who knows what you're going to find aboard this giant spaceship. Way of the Serpents, I've got a fiction in the spirit of, this is by Harold Jones, fiction in the spirit of Appendix N, of course, Appendix N being the list of fiction and non-fiction which inspired E. Gary Gygax when he was creating Dungeons & Dragons, and is listed at the back of the Dungeon Master's Guide, so the famed Appendix N. So it's got a lengthy piece of fantasy fiction here before we get into Appendix, the Beast of Hanover, which is to support that, a little bit of creatures which you can use, and along with the Kranich, which you can take from that fiction. And it's followed by The Return of the Wild, a rising threat in the Shudder Mountains. Now this is for the Unchained Coffin, or the Chained Coffins setting, I think, by Michael Curtis, which originally was a box set, but has been more recently been reprinted as a full book. And this includes new patrons and Nengor the Wide One with a complete patron taint. So extra to that, and then we have rules for 1970s Earth characters for DCC. So not 1980s, characters 1970s, and again that's a callback to really when you think about it. So the period when this was coming out, Metamorphosis, this was coming out, 1976, and the same again for the Judges Guild, basically when that was operating between really during the late 70s, during that flowering of the early role-playing industry. And we've got a big table of occupations you can just roll on, and that will give you your occupation and some equipment, personal items, and an astrology table before we get into, not encounters anymore, a level 0 adventure. Now, why level 0? Well, one of the features of Dungeon Crawl Classics, and I've mentioned it before, is the character funnel, in which you as a player take control of not one, but typically 4, sometimes 3 player characters, all 0 level. And if he's 0 level, what that means is your character does not have a class, so it's not a warrior, or a wizard, or a thief, or a cleric. If he survives the adventure, then he will have enough experience points to go up a level and become first level itself. So become more powerful and gain access to class abilities. But as a 0 level character, all he's got to rely upon is his stats, his luck, whatever equipment he finds, and the playing skill of the player. And often in a character funnel, essentially things are stacked against the player characters, whether you like it or not. And the fun of it is seeing who survives and why. Character funnels are a feature of Dungeon Crawl Classics, and they are fun to play on the odd occasion. We don't do it all the time because, too much of a good thing. But here we have a character funnel for 1970s Earth characters flung into the into an alternate fantasy setting. So here we go. We have a set of characters, typical fantasy sort of characters. So we've got like a construction worker, obviously a fantasy geek at the back with this Frodo Lives character t-shirt, and you're almost a Thelma-like character there, from Scooby-Doo, and flung into Ezerak's volcano fortress. There we go. There's the map, and there's the adventure they will play through and see whether they survive. And we have I've got Ratsnake and Lankmar wagering game with dice, and this prefigures the release of the Lankmar box set, which Goodman Games have done since. And we've got a bit more. This is really prefiguring it. We've got the Hand of St. Heverskin, which is a magical item, complete, and then it's accompanied by a Frafford and Grey Mouse stories by publication date. So that's useful. You're going to get into your Lankmar game. That's a useful reference. And again, you can find that anywhere, but and then we have the Way of the Dagon, the Gen Con 2015 Spelled You Tourney module, a game of battling wizards. Because Goodman Games does big tournaments at Gen Con, and some of these will appear in this program, and they all already published a big adventure. Basically the greatest thieves in Lankmar adventure box set, which came out of that tournament, and we've got different spell tables and so on, and counterspell and Wrath of Dagon, and essentially for running as part of that adventure, and essentially very short character sheet and notes from the organisers, so that you could run this yourself if you wanted to. So there we go, there's the notes. Before we get into the next adventure, which is Death by Nexus, which is another level 2 tournament adventure. This is by it's by several people: Jim Wampler, Stephen Newton, Daniel J. Bishop, Jeffrey Tadlock, John Marr, and Bob Brinkman. And essentially, this is again it's a tournament adventure using basic loads rules. So lots of action, art by James V. West here, whom you will know from the Black Pudding fanzine, which I've done unboxings of in the past. And then we return to Appendix N, so we've got more inspirations, and here we have so Appendix N, inspirations for Peril on the Purple Planet and Against the Atomic Overlord. So inspirations for specific products. So the Shadow Mountain might be Peril on Purple Planet, I'm not sure. But there we go. Oh, inspirations for the Change Coffin. So if you've got those modules, those expansions, they're worth tracking down. So if you've got those modules, this is worth looking at to see some of the inspiration that help the authors. So yeah, and then we have basically a bit of discussion of the 998th Conclave of Wizards, and then we have more appendix inspirations. Doom of the Savage Kings. It's just general reading stuff, and then we've got an illustrated interview with Harold Oates. Harold Oates almost needs no introduction. He's the cover artist of many a Dungeons and Dragons title, including a copy of the front of the basic Dungeons and Dragons box set, and lots of Dungeons & Dragons classic titles as well. But here you've got illustrated interview and a showcase of his art all in one place, and that's a great introduction. So the interviews are sort of like a big as it were in terms of its text, but the presentation, but you've got lots of artwork alongside it. And as well, photographs of the home at TSR. And I mean, previous volumes of this have basically interviewed like Lou Zocchi, famous for his dice, But here we've really got a chance for Harold Oates to really expand on and discuss some of his most famous pieces of art. That's quite a lengthy piece, but it's great. I mean, you know, it's covering most of its history. It's not particularly detailed or goes into a lot of depth, I don't think. But again, you really are here for the artwork as such. I could just keep showing you that. This is fantastic. I mean, it's, you know, if you're a fan of Harold Oates, you'll really want to read this, and you really want to see his artwork as well. More and more. So lots, yeah. So essentially here we've got, may have recognised that as the cover to I Want Dollars for Forbidden City, which I have reviewed, you'll remember that from the Mulvey box set for Dungeons and Dragons, basic Dungeons and Dragons, which was my start with the hobby. But again, fantastic artist, fantastic artwork, illustrated so many great books, and it's got even more weird and fantastic and more cartoon-like, I think, here as well. But that's fitting. It feels great. It looks fantastic. It's such good artwork. Really fantastic. I mean, they're basically just could flip through this and show you page after page. It's really good. Just so much, so good. And here, this interesting is you can actually see he's sort of like a sketch before doing the fully worked piece, which is actually amazing. Such good artwork. You know, so detailed flavours, and then we've got his artwork grace of covering of various Dungeon Crawl Classics modules, going all the way back to the days when they were for the D20 system. I'm a bit disappointed that these aren't in colour. That's a big shame. I think they should have been presented in colour, but you can see the originals in colour. Here we have Appendix D, Yothian Lich Kings expansion for the Purple Planet Author's Edition. Glossography, so more monsters for the power of the Purple Planet. And really, that's the Purple Planet setting. That's one box that I do not have, and I really wish I had. Then we've got 40 years of Judges Guild Legacy of Awesome. So we've got the Guide to Judges Guild, and this is sort of comes out at the same time as the big volume, and I do mean big volume commemorating Judges Guild. It is. I mean, that book is sort of like this. Oh, it's basically. I can't give you justice on here, but it's about, I would say it's about 3 foot deep and about 2 foot, about 18 inches wide. It's something you've got to carry like that. It comes in the same box. It's fantastic, but I do not recommend you carry that around. And I do not know when you're ever going to get a chance to read it. It's too big to read. So yeah, continuing history of Judges Guild. Potted history, all useful and interesting for the role-playing historian. Before we get on to Unknown Gods Revised and Expanded, which was never reprinted. I think the best point is here. It's reprinted in full for the first time. So here we go. Got the various gods from the Judges Guild setting for the Wilderland setting. What more? So there's several various gods for that. If you're still playing that or you want to visit it, so it's an expansion. We have the Gary Con Trivia Contest. I've got a Lankmars Trivia Contest as well. Essentially, just a little bit of fripperies and throwaways. Just a bit of colour. Then we have Appendix End of Birthdays, and got the quiz answers, and then Gen Con 15 recap, just to the events and so on. There's the stand for Goodman Games at Gen Con. It's amazing. Get a chance to go and see it. Goodman Games stocks so much and it's not just its own product. It's everyone supporting Goodman Games content. It stocks all of those. Then we've got the judges in action here from various events, and then we've got my friend Brendan Lassar there, making it, bringing it large, as I say, creators, and then we've got them what's new with Goodman Games seminars. So photographs from all these events, commemorating it. And these things can be found online in the cases in terms of the actual recordings of those events. We have how to write a module, how to write adventure modules that don't suck seminar, just photographs that are just capturing those events, and tournament winners. For the record, here they are commemorating the event and the winners of these and so on. And then GaryCon, which is another convention I'd love to be able to go to at one point. And then Roadworthy, we basically interviewing the judges and so on who go out and present games on the road. And there's interviewing the judges and just going back over their role-playing experience for the last year. Again, building a sense of community and highlighting, the efforts that the fans put into running the game on an ongoing basis. And here we have the Goodman Games World Tour poster. Let's see where it goes. And then there's the event grid for the event for that tour. And of course, so just have a look. That's the Gen Con event guide. And then we got the nice little thing, 2015-2016 mailing label art. I mean, what a great touch is you get if you order something from Goodman Games. I've never done it because obviously I'm ordering from the States, and but they use these mailing labels, and they change them regularly, and they're almost collectible in themselves. But they really make an effort. And then we've got a couple of covers there at the end. And it comes to the end with Dear Archmage Abbey with some advice on your gaming life from your favourite Agony Aunt, and a nice bit of artwork at the end. So that's the Gen Con 2016 program guide. Goodman Games does this every year, so there's lots of these to look at, and they're really doing the same kind of thing, supporting Goodman Games, supporting its community, and capturing the previous year and what it was like. And they really are worth tracking down because they're fun to read. You get gaming content, you get a bit of gaming life, especially, of course, if you're a Goodman Games fan, which I am. But yeah, Goodman Games Gen Con Program Guide 2016, as I say, worth tracking down. In the meantime, thanks again for watching another unboxing in the Nook. If you've enjoyed this, then please do click that like button down below. And of course, if you have any comments or feedback, appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings here in the Nook, where you'll see me with a parcel and a book or game which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge, roughly half an hour or so, or say 10 minutes or so is what I'm aiming for. All of course accompanied by a nice cup of tea and occasionally a cat who is not ours. Then please do hit that subscribe button. Meanwhile, thanks again for watching, and I'll be back again soon with another unboxing in the Nook very soon. Bye for now.